I will be going over the 4 parts of restraints documentation: initiation, monitoring, renewal, and discontinuation. I will also point out certain problematic areas that you may encounter during your restraint documentation. The first part we will be discussing is initiation or application of the restraint. We will be looking at entering the correct order, initiating the care plan, as well as documenting in iView. Step 1. Placing the order. Always use the restraint seclusion subphase order set, which is used for both non-violent and violent types of restraints. This restraint order will follow that restraint until it is discontinued. If we place a new restraint, we need a new restraint order. Step 2. Selecting the type of restraint. Once you order the restraint subphase, you will need to select the restraint type, non-violent or violent. This is one of those problematic areas which is often missed. A good hint to know if the type of restraint was not selected is if you are able to sign this order without filling out the details of the restraint. For instance, where the restraint is placed. If you need to bring back that field, click on the light bulb icon above the order set to see the unchecked orders. Step 3. Complete your required details and sign. To multi-select the restraint options, hold down your Control key. Step 4. Order your restraint care plan. The care plan will also follow the restraint. Once the restraint is removed, the care plan will need to be completed and discontinued. Any new restraint will need a new care plan. Step 5. Select or unselect any goals and interventions and sign your care plan. Step 6. Opening your documentation via your task list. It is always best to document using tasks or activities as it will open all the required fields. Select your Restraint Apply task and click Document. Step 7. Activate your dynamic group icon. This is another one of those problematic areas that can be missed. Again, if you notice that you never documented anything about the restraint, check to see if your dynamic group was activated. Once you finish your restraint documentation, complete your communication physician and the restraint education documentation. Another problematic area is selecting the correct task with its corresponding action. For example, if you select the monitor task but select the action of apply, the restraint documentation fields will not open. You need to make sure that if you want to do an apply action, you select the apply task. Monitoring restraints. We are required to document restraint monitoring every 2 hours. Restraint education is documented as needed. Step 1. Opening your documentation. It is always best to use your task list. So go to your restraint monitoring task and click on Document. Step 2. Complete all required fields and address all fields that have a diamond. The task time will be reflected in your iView documentation time. As long as you did your assessment within that hour, you do not need to adjust the time. For example, if the task time is for 1700, as long as you did your restraint assessment between 1700 and 1759, you can document in the 1700 column. Renewing restraints. Restraints need to be renewed at least every 3 days. The order is called Restraint Continued Non-Violent Non-Self-Destructive. Finally, we will discuss the discontinuation of the restraints, the order, as well as the iView documentation and care plan. Step 1. Place the order, Restraint Discontinued Non-Violent Non-Self-Destructive. Remember to document the time the restraint was discontinued in the date time field. Step 2. Once you add your order, open your Restraint Discontinue task. Step 3. Document your discontinuation documentation. Restraint education is also required upon discontinuation of the restraint. Step 4. Inactivate the restraint group. To keep iView clean, make sure you inactivate your restraint dynamic group. This will help prevent confusion in the event that another restraint needs to be ordered. To inactivate, right-click on the name of your restraint and select Inactivate. Remember, each restraint order or instance needs to have its own restraint group in iView. Step 5. Complete and discontinue your restraint care plan. To review, always use the restraint seclusion subphase order set and discontinue restraint orders. Use your task activities to open up the restraint documentation rather than going straight to iView. Remember that each restraint instance should have its own order, dynamic group in iView, and care plan. Once that restraint is removed, we need to put in the discontinue order, inactivate the dynamic group, and discontinue that care plan. For violent, self-destructive restraints, the ordering process and documentation are very similar to the non-violent, non-self-destructive restraints. We will go over the differences when ordering and documenting the violent, self-destructive restraints. What does not change? The order is still the same, restraint seclusion subphase. We still document through the apply, monitor, and discontinue task. The basic restraint documentation process is the same. Some minor changes, we select the violent self-destructive option for all the orders and care plans rather than the non-violent options. And the monitor task can be found under the continuous task tab rather than the scheduled unscheduled tab. The major changes is we now need a physician face-to-face documented within 1 hour of initiation. This can be done on a paper form or in a progress note. We need Q15-minute monitoring, which is done on a paper document. And restraint orders needs to be renewed Q4 hours and can only be renewed up to 24 hours. After that, we will need a new order. There are 2 paper forms that are used for violent self-destructive restraints. The first one is the restraint seclusion evaluation form, which has the elements needed for the physician face-to-face documentation. Ensure the date time documented is within 1 hour of the restraint initiation time. The second form is called Behavior Management Restraint Seclusion Worksheet. This is used for the Q15-minute observations. Restraints Worksheet. Ensure that all sections of the sheet are completed. The most common areas that are missed are family notification, one-to-one observation maintained while patient in restraints, as well as the date time on the signature field. The initial start time you document on the flow sheet should match the time in the time applied field. You could do the next documentation before 15 minutes if you want to round out your assessment times. For example, your initial assessment was at 8:58. You could do another at 0900 to round out the times.